Mhm.
You live, Kishata.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for the first CYA chat. We're going to be discussing mental health, climate change, the workplace, and in honor of World Mental Health Day, which is today, we're going to talk about why all of those are so important for us as CARICOM and Caribbean youth to pay attention to. My name's Tershatha Jeffrey. I'll be your moderator for this session. And with me, I have three CARICOM youth ambassadors as well as Mrs. Charlene Pyle, who is a mental health expert. And we'll be speaking with you today about what World Mental Health Day means to us. So I'll allow the CYAs to introduce themselves, and I'll begin with the current dean, Vanessa Burke of Cayman Islands.
Hi, everyone. My name is Vanessa Burke. I am from the Cayman Islands and the Dean of the CARICOM Youth Ambassadors. Today is so important to shed light on mental health, especially when it relates to young people in the Caribbean. We did talk about some of the climates, but mental health is just a core part of your physical health as well and how you are made up as a human. So it's important to tap in, check on yourself and see. So I'm looking forward to this discussion with you guys. And yeah.
Thank you, Vanessa. Dr. Tiffany Scarrett is the female CYA from Montserrat, so I'll let her introduce herself as well.
Thank you, Tashata. Thank you to the team for organizing today's quick chat. It's a pleasure to be here as one of our CARICOM Youth Ambassadors and just shedding light and sharing experiences, really. Youth make up a large part of the Caribbean population and by virtue of that, a large part of the Caribbean workforce. And we represent multiple generations, whether millennial, Gen Z, or otherwise. As we've been joking, there are youth and there are senior youth. So whoever is joining, we welcome you and thank you for being part of the conversation. But yes, really shedding some light on our experiences with mental health in the workplace and encouraging young people really to be honest and open about what they're experiencing and seeking help when and if necessary.
Thank you, Dr. Scarrett. And as an older youth, thank you for the welcome. I appreciate it. Joshua is the male CYA for Grenada, so I'll let him introduce himself as well.
Yeah, hey, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Joshua Andal. I'm the male CARICOM Youth Ambassador for Grenada, Carriacou, and Petite Martinique. I'm an AI consultant by profession, and I have personally suffered, well, I won't say suffered, but I've experienced mental health issues, specifically generalized anxiety. I'm diagnosed with generalized anxiety. So now, operating at the level I'm at, I kind of advocate for specifically men, young men, older men in mental health who are suffering from mental health, who kind of allow it to keep them back from pursuing what they want to pursue and achieve what they want to achieve in life. So yeah, I'm excited for this discussion to shed light on the importance of looking after ourselves.
Thank you, Joshua. And Mrs. Charlene Pyle, our mental health expert, let me allow you to introduce yourself as well.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for having me on here. I am delighted to be a part of such a groundbreaking initiative. I am most excited when it comes to mental health because it serves as a reminder of how we should value our well-being and the need to prioritize our well-being and our mental health daily. Is very important to me, mental health, because I work in areas with children, with women, with men, and in Guyana, where I am from, we are gravitating to understanding and appreciating the importance of mental health. And I know that this quick chat will allow and inform those who are looking and who are tuned in from around the Caribbean to have a better appreciation of mental health and all that it offers.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mrs. Pyle. And I'm hoping that as well, that through this discussion, we're able to touch the young people who are watching and the senior youth, as Dr. Scarrett said, who are watching as well. And also we're able to begin or continue a conversation that's really necessary. So as I mentioned before, today is World Mental Health Day. And the theme this year is about prioritizing mental health in the workplace. Now, as Tiffany mentioned, whether you're Gen Z, whether you are a millennial, whether you're even maybe one of the younger Gen Xers, within the context of what we do, most of us are at work or most of us work. And so mental health is not something that we just kind of deal with when we're at home and then we leave it aside and we do our work and then we come back home and tap into our mental health struggles or whatever they may be. The workplace can affect that. And so the idea behind the theme is how as a workforce or as people who are part of the workforce, we can make sure from employers to employees that we are engaging in discussions about mental health and that we're supporting each other through different mental health initiatives, through community, through camaraderie, through community building. And so, within the context of the Climate Change and Health Project, or the Climate Change and Mental Health Project, it's also important to think about how the workplace is affected by climate change. So, we know there are different jobs, for example, that are being lost because of the effects of climate change or harder to do. Think of our fisher folk who, for years they were able to support their families just off of fishing. And within the Caribbean, that industry is slowly, unfortunately, dying because of the effects of climate change. So, how does that affect someone who has lived their entire life being able to provide through that means and now they're facing challenges? We also know that, again, climate change worries young people. Young people are very worried about climate change. Young people are worried about their futures. And as part of that future is, how am I going to survive and develop a career? Is the career that I want to go into going to be accessible to me when I've finished university or when I'm ready to join the workplace? And so all of these ideas, all of these topics come together when we think about mental health. So as we go through that, I'm going to speak to Joshua first because he mentioned his own struggles with being diagnosed with generalized anxiety. And Joshua, you mentioned that you have your share of issues that you've been dealing with over the last few years. So can you talk us through what World Mental Health Day means to you as someone who has officially received a diagnosis and how your advocacy plays into who you are as a person?
Yeah, so I believe 100% World Mental Health Day it's a big thing for me because I think that many people don't appreciate how difficult it is to not only operate with a mental health disability, something along the lines of that, but to operate with it unknowingly, not knowing you have it, to have anxiety but not be officially diagnosed. So for me, it's an extremely big thing, and my advocacy has allowed me to become the person I am today because I remember a personal story in community college. There were times when I could not even finish my examinations because I was getting panic attacks. And because of that, it affected my ability to work, as Tiffany stated. In that case, I was a student, so that was my work. So it affected my ability to do my work. And because of that, it affected my worldview, the person who I was, who I thought I was, what I wanted to achieve. All of these things really got affected. So going to get diagnosed, speaking to the doctor, etc., everything, and kind of getting to know a bit more about mental health issues and learning about mental health day and stuff like this. Now that I have a better understanding of mental health issues, my generalized anxiety, how to deal with it, I kind of advocate mainly because I just don't think many men appreciate how much understanding mental health can actually shape who you are as an individual, because I was on two totally different paths. In secondary school, when I had anxiety coming to community college, I've been suspended a lot. And Michelle, who's actually the program manager at CARICOM for our department, the CARICOM Youth Ambassadors, when we were preparing my speech for the CARICOM Heads of Government meeting, she mentioned to me during research that the DSM-5 actually showed that mental health is linked to actually maladaptive behaviors and violent behaviors and stuff like that. And it was only afterwards learning about all of these things, I kind of realized that mental health was actually shaping the person that I was back then, because I was extremely violent. I was extremely violent. I did not know that it was tied to my anxiety, but it was just showing up in different areas. So now understanding what mental health is, the benefits of it, the benefits of understanding, how we can take care of ourselves, not only as generally speaking as well, but like I said, I advocate for men. Yeah, it really changed who I am today. And looking out for the other young guys, not only on the block, but generally speaking in the workplace, because I think everyone needs to understand how important it is to take into consideration the negative effects that mental health can have if it's gone unknowingly checked.
Thank you, Joshua, and thank you for being willing to share your story. By you advocating and you being honest about what you go through, I think you're really going to help a lot of other young men to be able to think, maybe that's my issue too. Maybe it's
Yeah,
anxiety, and not just that I'm a maladaptive person, or not just that I'm an angry person, but that there's a deeper meaning to that. So thank you.
yeah.
And while you were speaking, Joshua, Dr. Scarrett, I noticed that you were nodding a lot, like, supporting his point. So as a medical practitioner, how do you see the link between mental health issues and what our young people are facing today?
Thank you so much, T. Definitely, there is a connection between mental health and well-being and our functionality. So the question that we tend to ask is, are these emotions or moods that you're having affecting your function or your activities of daily living? And we're more inclined to make clear intervention when we see that this is impacting individuals' functionality or ability to work and live. And so I'm going to use this opportunity just to go through quickly some of the symptoms, some of the signs, just in case people are listening and wondering, well, how do I know? When should I be seeking help? When we speak about anxiety, for example, some of the key symptoms or signs that we look for, we tend to ask, are you having these symptoms over a period of 6 months? And is it happening more days than not? And some of the symptoms are restlessness, feeling on edge. Do you feel like you're easily tired? Or do you have difficulty concentrating or have a feeling of going blank when you're under pressure? Is there an underlying irritability that you tend to feel on most days, or have very tense muscles or feel stressed? Or have you had a change in your sleep pattern? So some persons, that is one of the first signs. They come and they say, Doc, I'm not sleeping as well as I used to. I feel very restless. And for some people, it's a physical manifestation. They have the heart racing, they have the cold sweats, etc. That is triggered for some people by very particular situations and scenarios. And for some persons, it's multiple. It's more generalized. What else? We also see in our community persons trying to cope with depression. And again, it's sadness, it's low energy, it's a feeling of what we describe as hopelessness. Some persons, it manifests as irritability as well. So you see that there's kind of an overlap with the mood-based disorders in terms of how they manifest. Changes in sleep again, feeling a bit sad. Some people sleep a lot more, or they can't sleep as well if they're anxious and they're thinking about things, or they find it difficult to concentrate. Another key thing we look at is the things that you typically enjoy doing. So if you are somebody who always loved to go for walks, so you always love to sing and dance, do you no longer find enjoyment in hobbies or activities that typically would have been of interest to you? And those are some of the kind of early signs, warning signs. What we really want to encourage our young people to do is, for the first step, when you acknowledge that you're seeing these changes, finding somebody you can trust to speak with, or seeking help in terms of health facilities. And depending on which island you're in or which country you're in, CARICOM, or wherever you're listening, your access to resources will vary. If you have access to online resources that are free, whether it's YouTube or virtual, and you can utilize those, great. But you might find it necessary to go into your closest health facility, whether it's a clinic or a hospital, and have that initial conversation. What we have been doing here in Montserrat, and I have to take the time to give kudos to the Ministry of Health and Social Services, is really deepening and broadening our mental health units and providing more experts who are able to provide that support, whether it is to youth and children and adolescents in the form of a psychologists just for that age group or additional counselors and psychologists, psychiatrists for older persons. So identifying that something has shifted, identifying that you're not necessarily performing at your optimum, and connecting this change with something that we might be able to help with on the professional side. And I know lots of people come and they say, Doc, I'm really not interested in starting any drugs. And pharmacotherapy or medication isn't necessarily the first step. There are many things that we do to support in terms of behavioral therapy. I'm sure Charlene will speak a little bit about that, but there are options outside of medication. And there are times when that really is the final step that allows persons to achieve their goals of more holistic recovery. And it all depends on the individual.
Thank you, Dr. Scarrett. So we're hearing that it's not necessarily just that you go to a doctor and you say, Doc, I'm not feeling the best, and the doctor says, take this pill. There are steps not only to helping you figure out what is not feeling my best, what that looks like, how that manifests in the individual. So the medical practitioners are taking individual looks at the patients and then coming up with some type of practice, some type of therapy, or
Yeah.
any type of intervention, as you said, that would allow you to address the specific issues that each patient is going through.
Correct.
Yeah. So you don't have to be worried that you're walking into a doctor's office and the first
Just
thing
to
that
get a
they do-
prescription, right?
Yeah. Yes, exactly. So, Mrs. Pyle, based on your expertise, as Dr. Scarrett said, you would be the one who would deal with the behavioral adaptation or the information that you can share about how someone can change their behaviors or work on the behaviors that may be affecting their mental health, or work on behaviors that will help them to manage their mental health. So, as part of your practice and what you do, how do you approach that patient relationship with the young people who come to work with you?
Okay, thank you so much. In working with young people, the younger side of youth, uh, uh, cognitive behavioral therapy is used a lot in my field, because helping them to appreciate that there's a link between how they think and how they behave uh, impacts how they in turn change their behaviors. For example, I was working with a young lady, let's call her young lady X, and she had some maladaptive behaviors. She was engaging in different forms that I may not mention at the moment, but we sat and we spoke. And for us, for myself, mostly, I try to build a relationship with the younger folks to help them appreciate that, you know what, we have issues that we're facing and there is help and we can do this. Helping them to understand that we have a client-centered approach whereby we sit, we talk, we build a rapport, and then we work through it. We might start with journaling, we might have different forms. For example, Dr. Scarrett mentioned they might not be able to engage in behaviors that they used to engage in. I try to identify those behaviors and find ways that we can go back to that. How do we appreciate going for long walks? How do we appreciate having time at the movies and so on? So engaging them in a thinking, behavioral changing kind of approach helps them to change their behaviors, and it works. It helps them. For the ones that I've worked with, it truly helps them.
Okay, thank you. So again, we're hearing that it's not just about a one size fits all. You know, Charlene, you mentioned journaling, you mentioned going for walks, you mentioned getting them in touch with things that they used to do that help them find joy, and trying to reconnect them with what was part of what helped them to find joy and happiness and joie de vivre, for lack of a better word. And so, again, this idea of like a one size fits all solution is really what we're hearing y'all are not working with as professionals, whether you're doing the behavioral therapist aspect of it, whether you're focusing on it from a medical basis, it really is about figuring out what works best for that young person. Thank you so much, Charlene. So that segues perfectly into my next question, which is for Dean Burke. As part of the larger climate change and mental health advocacy that the CARICOM Youth Ambassadors are currently doing under the EU PAHO project, one of the things that I know as someone who's been working with you is that you have a very holistic approach to this topic. The CYAs are doing incredible projects, beginning incredible projects that really touch on every aspect of climate change, how it affects mental health, and really making sure that there's a clear link between those two, as well as clear solutions. So, Dean Burt, can you take me through some of the initiatives that not only you're doing in the Cayman Islands as the leader of the CARICOM Youth Ambassadors Corps, but also what your fellow CYAs are going to be doing underneath the project?
Hello again. So it's nice to hear the different perspectives from my colleagues as well as the idea of us coming together to tackle mental health from different angles, talking about climate change. So on the idea of climate change, just quickly talking on anxiety, as Josh would have mentioned, there's the foundation of the Castile 5, which is a framework about SEL and social emotional learning. So taking it back to last year, we would have, as the CYA cohort, participated in CYS, so the Caribbean Youth Summit. And there we did have a session with a previous alumni of CYA who talked about the Castile framework, and it's about social and emotional learning, or other words, SEL. And it takes the different components of what makes up a person, how they navigate like self-awareness and self-management, and how that then segues into like social awareness, relationship skills, and then further the responsible decision making. So that all can be impacted by different environments as well. And that can include the classroom climate, the wider community climate, and then further on. And you can see how it could be scaled up to families, communities, that type of environment. So there's no way to acknowledge SEL without also acknowledging environments and the wider climate change impact, right? So CYAs have been up to amazing things. I'm proud to like stand here and talk about that. Some of our CYAs went to SIDS, and that was all about small island developing states all coming together to talk about climate change. We have many climate activists in the CYA cohort that are doing things in their own respective areas. And climate change being talked about from a holistic perspective, especially when it comes to climate depression, and it's called eco-anxiety, really. We can't ignore the fact that as young people, it is going to bother us. So we almost have a duty to show up in different ways. This small chat webinar is a big step forward to have collective voice, but there's so much perspectives out there. And I can't stress to say that it's important for us to show up, to speak up, not just about our mental health and our avenues to tackling it, but climate change and the idea of being displaced and the idea of not having a home, or maybe the erasure of your home and your identity. And that also plays into the Castile framework of your identity and who you are and your core values. You would talk about the fishermen. It's not just the tackling their physical environment, but it's now the idea of battling, who am I going to be? What is my children going to look like? This is who I am. I'm a fisherman. This is my way of life, physically, emotionally, mentally, and then looking at those components and trying to find ways to tackle that. So I'm happy to say we're going to, as a CYA cohort under the CARICOM social development, we're going to be tackling mental health training. So I'm looking forward to the mental health training that will be coming up. And surely we'll be able to discuss that a little bit further as well. But yeah, I think there's so many things that we have in the pipelines. And I look forward to us as CYAs equipping ourselves with that information to not just only help us to understand our emotions through the SEL framework, but then also being able to share that with other young people and them to equip their communities so that we can tackle this all holistically, as you would have mentioned.
Thank you, Dean Burke. That sounds like an incredible foundation to build on. And as you mentioned, the CYA team, the CYA cohort has incredible activists from all walks of life, climate change activists, as you mentioned, mental health activists. And I know that one of the things that's been happening as part of the CCH project is that there's been a lot of training, a lot of information about how to not only take the information, you sit down in a conference, you take in the information, but actually actioning that information and actually using that information to make the CCH projects, the CYA projects, more substantive and more impactful so that they're really getting into the areas that are needed to be worked on and that their impact is felt, those ripples are felt. So as you mentioned, Vanessa, the SEL framework, etc., being able to use that information and use it to make the projects that much better because they're incredible projects. I know because I've read the proposals, but also being able to really take that information. And so it's incredible to have partners like the EU, like PAHO, who are willing to fund these initiatives and come on board and say, we are supporting the young people of our region in making sure that they can be the thought leaders, but also the action leaders. So thank you for that overview. That's very helpful. So pay attention to the CARICOM Youth Ambassadors pages and the CARICOM pages because you'll learn more about their initiatives over the coming months. So Joshua, as one of the youth ambassadors who is developing a project under the CCH banner, and also again as someone who has gone through your own personal struggles about anxiety, what do you think for you, what is the focus of your advocacy as you move throughout the final years of your CYA advocacy, but also as being a mental health expert, a mental health advocate and a climate change advocate into the future?
For me, it would be simply awareness in one word, because I did not know that I had a mental health issue until I actually went to the doctor. And these are things that we can actually sit down and, monitor and say, okay, yeah, not knowing, not actually 100% going to the doctor, but saying, okay, I think I may have uh, anxiety, I think I may be depressed and stuff like that. So it's just awareness, but not only knowing about these mental health issues, but also knowing what we can do, as Tiffany stated, to or possibly without medication. Because I love the point that she made, coming away from medication, because I actually have not had a panic attack for 2 years, thank God, and um, I've only been using breathing techniques, meditation, and through exercise, and I've never had a panic attack. So I was on medication, but again, the time when I was on medication, I didn't know, I wasn't aware of, I would say the natural, the natural aspects or the natural methods that I can use to mitigate against a panic attack or to help me with my anxiety. So for me, I would just say the focus would be awareness, letting people know the key, I would say the key indicators for someone who's suffering with a mental health issue, what you can do to help them, where they can go, all of these things to be able to help them so that they would be able to accept it. And from the acceptance, go ahead and see how they would be able to integrate it within their life because it's already there, and just continue to live their life and perform to the best of their ability.
Yes, awesome. Again, I'm so appreciative of this conversation as someone who also has my own mental health struggles, as I mentioned to you, Joshua and Vanessa. I also struggle with anxiety disorder. And so to hear someone talk about your success story, even though I'm older than you, as an older youth, that's still inspiring. And I'm hoping that the young people who are watching right now can get some type of indication of there's so many avenues. If you would prefer to try medication, as Dr. Scarrett mentioned, that's absolutely available to you. But if you're more shy about medication or you want to stay away from that path, as Joshua mentioned, there are other things that you can do that can help to get you into a space where you're feeling better, where your mental health is more calm. You can use the breathing techniques, etc. So, Charlene, as a mental health expert, as a person who works in this field every day, can you give us some resources that someone can tap into if they like? They might say, you know what, I don't necessarily want to go the medication route. I want to try a few other things. You mentioned journaling, going on walks. What are some other things that young people can do to help really engage with mental health happiness or joy or better mental health practices?
Well, one of the things that they can tap into, they have some reading resources online. Those, for example, the Climate Psychology Alliance, that offers uh, information on how to deal with some of the issues that you have. This Climate Psychology Alliance, it's an organization which is dedicated to looking at different different aspects of issues that we might have. We can look at the American Psychological Association. There's some I'm so sorry, my voice is going. Um, and those resources we can tap into, we can read their books, there are different books that we can read, that we can look at, finding, in addition to those resources, it's important to have a community, have a source of strength, somewhere that you can go to. If it's someone that you can talk to, whether it's a friend, it's a pastor, somebody that you can vibe with, as the young people say, and you just offload. You have a safe space to do so. Yeah, you can read, you have a safe space, you try those same techniques that Joshua and Vanessa mentioned. There is no one size fit all for everyone. For me, I might read a book and it might help me. I might seek counseling, for example. There are different, in Guyana, we have different aspects where we could go to counseling. We have the psyche, the mental health unit, we have Ministry of Health, we have Ministry of Human Services. There are different places to go and seek help. Whether you're not that type of person, you can have a safe space. This is a very good forum where you're able to, pinpoint that, you know what, I might be having issues with, I might have anxiety. While I was studying for my master's in Trinidad, one of the things I did, just sharing a little experience, uh, it was there was this lecturer that I had to read 10 articles, and we had to summarize 10 articles in one day. So it was a back-to-back class. And it was overwhelming. It was very overwhelming. And as a youth, I'm in the midpoint at this point, going over to the senior youth. But I also struggled with anxiety disorder. And like Joshua, it's been a few years since I've had a panic attack. Because I was implementing these strategies, breathing techniques, therapy, counseling, reading. Like I said, there's no one size fit all for everyone, but what might work for someone, whether that is counseling, reading, journaling, taking walks, taking a trip somewhere, there are a lot of things that we can do, but seeking, once it gets to a place where, for like Dr. Scarrett said, once it is a prolonged something, we need to get clinical help. Get there. Those are some of the things that we can do to help us.
Thank you. Because now, as you mentioned, you can go to a website, for example. Young people have a lot of access to the internet. Not all, but a lot, many young people. And you can go to the internet, you can check out the resources you mentioned, the American Psychological Association, etc. But also, even before you go to those resources or before you look into maybe more clinical aspects, there are things that you can do: journaling, reading, hanging out with your friends, finding a group. I've done some reading on mental health, and I realized there's a lot of studies about how effective dancing is on helping to release endorphins. And so, if you want to just put on some music and do a little dance to a song or two in a moment where you're feeling a bit overwhelmed, that could be helpful. It's obviously not a long-term solution, but like Joshua mentioned, with something like a breathing technique, or as Mrs. Fowle mentioned, something like sitting down and journaling your feelings, whatever works for you, there is nothing that is wrong if it's a solution that works for you, that helps you feel better, that helps you to get through that moment. So then you could reach out to someone like Tiffany or Charlene, who who are experts in this space and can help you come up with longer term solutions. So, Vanessa, I know that you're doing some work with an organization in Cayman today, and you're doing some work in terms of mental health and the school classroom specifically. And because a lot of the young people that you serve as CARICOM Youth Ambassadors are in school, whether they're in secondary school or at a tertiary education level, can you talk us through some of the information that you are working on with the group today and some of the solutions that you've come up with, some of the statistics, so that we can have a good picture of what the problem is, but also some of the solutions to make sure that we're working towards a better mental health space for Caribbean youth?
Thank you. So in Cayman, it's quite a mental health crisis like other jurisdictions. It's a very serious topic. I think when we think about mental health, we think of it individually, like each individual person, which is important when it comes to tackling the individual care, but we look at this as a crisis in terms of how it's impacting everyone. We've seen a lot of young people, unfortunately, not being able to cope and resulting in ultimate decisions. And that is a decline of our young people in the region, and that hopelessness, like Tiffany would have mentioned, hopelessness is a big deal. So just to talk about in Cayman and painting the landscape, it was recorded last year. So we've done a lot in our environment. And I have to mention the Alex Panton Foundation here, as they are a foundation that was created out of a suicide in our community, and the family and friends coming together to create a foundation to not just create awareness, but provide resources. So they now have a place called Alex's Place, which provides care to young people, and then also a hotline as well. So that is the new resources in our community that has helped tremendously. So just to read the statistics of that, in 2023, there was 1,043 adolescent outpatient visiting the Alex's Place, compared to 1,941 that already visited this year, which that just shows the increased need for mental health resources and people to check in and to provide the support to our young people. The suicide rate this year is very high. We've lost quite a lot of young people in the Cayman Islands and of adolescent age, and it's heartbreaking. As a young leader and activist, I cannot stress enough the climate we're currently living in, and the need for us to not just wake up, but look at the transitions of life. So one thing that is dear to me that I'm advocating for is the transition in how we, as a community, coach people from like primary school to high school. That's a big change. Sometimes we look at grieving as somebody has to be lost, but that's a lost experience, a lost environment. How do we make them go from primary school to high school? And the biggest thing is high school to life. What am I going to do? Am I going to go to college or not? Am I going to go to work or not? And that uncertainty, I feel like in our environment, we're pushing so many boundaries. We're trying to find the cure for everything. And that is creating an anxious environment. We all want to do really good because we want the best outcome for our countries and our societies. But then what pressure does that put on the next generation to also meet those goals, to be the next doctor, to be the next lawyer, to be the next leader? What does that look like for them? And sometimes that overwhelm and not having the environment to coach them has unfortunately resulted in a higher pressure. And that's where the Charlene would have mentioned and Ms. Pyle would have mentioned that you need to seek professional counseling. But sometimes in our environment, we did a long destigmatization of mental health, like making sure, okay, it is okay to ask for help. But then it's still sometimes hard for people to put themselves forward to say, I am having this challenge or I'm not feeling good. So we have to continue to make these resources available, really do a job at saying, I used to seek help as well, or I know someone, or let me help you. Sometimes it's, and in the workforce, especially to this year's theme being in the workforce, we need to make a better regulations to allow people mental health days, provide resources, sometimes breathing rooms. I am not sure the resources that would be available to every environment because we have different sectors and industries, but we need to look at people for who they are, people, humans with emotions and bad days, and that way we are able to make a difference. So all that just to say, in Cayman, we are trying to work towards this. It's an ongoing challenge, and there's many solutions that we can tap into. Also currently building our mental health facility here, a new state-of-the-art facility, and hoping that will be launched soon to give people in the community the support they need there. But from my scale and what I'm doing, I'm hoping to partner with Alex Fontaine. We're going to launch a campaign for the next week, where we're going to raise awareness of different parts and things you can do. So, for example, one of the posts is just about the commemorative day today and creating the awareness and the statistics. And then throughout, we have things like coping mechanisms, third spaces. So let me just dive into that a little bit. Third spaces being, the removal of environments and communities, but also the fact that like we as humans go from work or school to home. And we need third spaces in between those places, like church groups, or you have clubs, like young people need clubs, sports groups, advocacy groups, somewhere you go outside of those two spaces where you can also tap into your other skills and who the other components of what makes you who you are, right? So those are very important. We need to develop more third spaces and also be able to provide these spaces with the refurbishment and the resources they need to continue to be sustained. So that's another post that we're trying to do. Then we have like quick resources that's local to the Cayman Islands that young people or other people in different demographics can tap into. And then we have self-care activities and also just a summary of calling the nation to continuously be vigilant, parents and everyone alike, to just remember, parents, to take care of your mental health, but also to see how that impacts your children and then also their mental health, and teachers likewise, and anyone in that dynamic relationship, to understand that you guys are humans. I think we have all these movies like Inside Out that tells us you have a lot going on in our heads a lot of the time, and we just need to be cognizant that humans are humans. We need to be kind, we need to be empathetic, and we need to just understand that we all have our own crisis, and collectively we can make a difference. That's where I would think we can go with the solutions we have. So thank you.
That was amazing, Vanessa. Like, I literally have goosebumps because so much of what you talked about is life changing. Having someone feel like there's some type of hope, that they're going through a crisis or they feel a crisis coming on, but that there's the Alex Patton Foundation, Alex's place, that they can go to, and where someone can say, hey, I've got you. What do you need? Let's work on this, right? And as Tiffany mentioned, building community. I think Charlene also mentioned having a community and having that space is so important. So shout out to Alex Patton Foundation in Cayman Islands and Alex's place, and shout out to you, Vanessa, for the impactful work that you are doing. And I'm really looking forward to hearing more about the work that y'all are going to be doing in the mental health space, and hearing some more about how other young people can get involved and how young people can tap into the resources. And something that stuck with me that you said, Vanessa, was that we have to destigmatize mental health issues, because in that destigmatization, we're also going to allow young people to feel like it's okay to ask for help. And so, Joshua, you mentioned that you realized something was off and you were able to reach out for help. Can you walk us through the process as we wrap up? Can you walk us through the process of what it was like to realize that something was not quite right, and then how you were able to find the courage to say, I'm not okay, I need help?
Yeah, well, for me, it was extremely frightening because, like I said, for me, it was manifesting in maladaptive behaviors. So, as a man, and I would say this as a man, there's a specific stereotype. And when it hit me, and I was able to sit down and realize, okay, yeah, something is wrong. I can't finish my exams. I'm getting panic attacks. Something is not, this isn't right. It was frightening because I was immediately thinking about, okay, yeah, what would my male friends think? Because I was immediately thinking, they're gonna make fun of me. Are they gonna not take it as serious? So for me, I was like, I'm pretty scared. And in that moment, I had to make a decision if I was going to continue to let these panic attacks affect me, the work I do, and of course, who I wanted to be in the future and get help, or if I was going to let what I thought my friends were going to say about me kind of continue to pull me away from getting help. And I was actually, I'll get to that. I was completely wrong. They 100% supported me. But yeah, I was extremely scared in that instance, and building up the courage because in our school, in our community college, the T. Marshall Community College, when you have something like anxiety, generalized anxiety, you normally have to apply because it may affect your exam time. So you have to apply and stuff like that. And normally you sit in a different room so they would know, okay, yeah, something is wrong with that student. So for me, again, I was extremely afraid. But like I said, I built up the courage. I had to sit back, have a discussion with myself, and realize what I actually wanted and where I wanted to go. And then I just kind of thought to myself, I was like, they don't really care. Or if they do care, they're probably suffering from the same thing. And they're projecting the fact that they did not get help onto me. So I'm like, okay, I can be an example. So this is how I saw myself as taking the first step in being an advocate. And I was also the president of the student council there. So for me, it was a big thing because it's like, okay, if the president of the student council is suffering from anxiety, he's having panic attacks, how can he actually run the student council and, represent us properly? So it was a big thing for me, the fear and everything. But again, I just had to sit back and realize and make that decision if I'm going to do it for myself, if I'm going to do it for others. And I just did it for myself. And it has been the best decision that I've ever made. And like I said, my friends actually supported me. My friends were like, okay, yeah. Well, whenever they saw me, whenever they saw the symptoms, they were like, okay, yeah, we need to take a step back from this, let us handle this, or do you need help with this? So yeah, sometimes it's not always what we may think it is.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Joshua, and for talking about that journey to courage. And you said that you were thinking it's either I'm going to do this for myself or I'm going to do this for others, or I'm going to like kind of live for myself. I'm going to live for others and what they may think. And by doing it for yourself, you've actually done it for others. By being the president of the student council and being able to say, hey, I'm struggling with this. As you mentioned, your friends supported you, your school supported you, your community, which we're hearing a lot. Vanessa mentioned it, Mrs. Pyle mentioned it, Dr. Scarrett mentioned it, this idea of community being a large part of how we can move forward into finding solutions. So it's so important that one voice begins, right? One voice crying in the wilderness, and you're able to bring people along on your journey and help to bring others and say, hey, allow them the courage to say, I too am struggling with this issue. I also have this issue. And I really appreciate that you're speaking about it from the perspective of a man, because we know that men struggle with mental health a lot, and that there are specific factors that go into how mental health manifests in men. And so it's so important for us to consider the gendered aspects of this topic. And so I'm really, really glad that as a man, you are finding power and empowerment in speaking out about your experiences, but also that you're helping to bring other young men in your space and in your community along. That's so important. So Joshua had a community and was able to get that information and that assistance. Mrs. Pyle, as a professional, as the person that someone like Joshua, like any other young person who's having these struggles would come to and say, hey, I'm not okay. I need some help. What are the steps that you would take to make sure that you're helping those young people to get some solutions? And as one of your last words, because we're going to wrap up in a little bit, but as one of your last words of encouragement to young people, what can they themselves do if they find themselves in a similar situation as Joshua?
Well, one of the things that I do when young people come forward and say, you know what, I need help, is applaud them for coming, because it takes a lot to come forward and say, I need help. I was talking to some folks the other day, and a student was dealing with somebody that keeps going back to maladaptive behaviors, and they keep doing it over and over again. How do you help them? And I told her, I said, the first step is to get to understand that, you know what, I need help. And they if they're able to acknowledge that they need help, then we work from there. We go through the cognitive behavioral therapy or whatever therapy might be necessary for them. And we work through that until they're able to, get the help and be grounded or be in a position where they are somewhat okay. Mental health is important. Mental health for young people, it's a significant thing. I treasure being able to be a part of this profession. Um, for folks, young people, mental health awareness is crucial for fostering understanding. And like Vanessa said, we need to destigmatize mental health. In some countries, in some Caribbean countries, it's been happening. People are able to come forward and say, oh, I have this issue, or I am suffering from, well, I have this issue and I need help with this. And in addition to destigmatizing and reducing stigma and misconceptions, it would help to improve the quality of life of young people and by extension, communities. It is important that young people understand that mental health is, and it affects how you function at home, at school, all over. And seeking help, having a community, engaging in whatever might bring you comfort will help. And reach out to somebody on World Mental Health Day today. Reach out to someone. It's your mind. Take care of it. Be kind to your mind. It will help.
Be kind to your mind. I love that. Reach out, ask for help. Today we're not only celebrating World Mental Health Day as a theory, but we're also thinking about it in practice and the ways in which we as young people can navigate these really treacherous waters that we're dealing with everything that's happening in the world, and making sure that, as Mrs. Pyle is saying, we're taking care of ourselves. As Joshua is saying, we're asking for help, we're reaching out. So Vanessa, you mentioned the work that y'all are doing at the Alex Patton Foundation and that the CYA core in Cayman is doing with that foundation. Can you walk us through the rest of the year? Can you walk us through some of the bigger plans that you have as a core, again, to give us a little preview of what's coming up, of the projects that are happening within the context of not only World Mental Health Day, but also, again, thinking about how we navigate that with climate change, with, as you mentioned before, the infrastructural changes that we're dealing with as young people, the work changes that we're dealing with, the what we can see in the atmosphere with the storms and the extreme heat that we're dealing with. Can you talk some more about that aspect of the projects that the CYAs are doing?
So, we in the CYA core are up to a lot of things, but specifically, I would like to touch on an initiative we have coming up. So we have a mental health first aid training program that's coming up shortly. And that program, as you would have mentioned, we're able to equip young people with a robust system, allowing for essential skills for us to be able to respond effectively to other young people's mental health needs. This will also help us with understanding the socioeconomic factors as well, like you would have mentioned, climate change and the other crises that we do have. And overall, just being equipped, having the knowledge is always the foundation to being able to tackle. You'd hear Dr. and Joshua touch on the fact that you need to have some understanding of how you feel to be able to sometimes be able to tackle it better. And that way, when we equip ourselves as CYAs with this mental health first aid training, we'll be able to then go and help other young people, or if they come to us as key pointers in our communities, we'll be able to be equipped and knowledgeable in our respective fields with this mental health first aid training. So that's what's coming up in the CYA landscape. I would like to just say my final words because I know you say you're going to wrap up soon as well. So I might as well just tackle that. I can't stress enough the importance of being equipped. The Castile framework is very simple, and there's many videos out there for young people to be able to look at that framework that is backed by research and be able to understand how social emotional learning impacts your overall ability to know yourself and know your place in society. So I would say definitely continue to be equipped. And then also just looking at the fact that mental health doesn't always have to be negative. Mental health is just your health. Just like physical health doesn't have to be negative. So we can just look at our mental health as understanding our emotions, whether that's being happy, sad, or even just understanding how it looks in identifying, okay, I'm burnt out. What does that mean for me? How does that impact my work? And then finding out, okay, how do I move forward? Do I need to take a break, as we would have mentioned, or I need to just take vacation and be able to pour back into myself so I can show up better to be my best version of myself. So we can look at mental health from all its broad perspective. I know we focus on the challenges of mental health, but there's so much opportunities. Maybe this can be an opportunity for young people to look into the sector where you can be more equipped. Maybe that's a field you might want to go in to be able to provide better assistance. So mental health is something, today we raise awareness around the challenges of young people, but I would like to also stress the fact that there's also many opportunities out there in the mental health field. So stay equipped and look out for the different opportunities out there and go and seize them.
Thank you, Vanessa. I love that you are not only advocating for let's figure out what's happening, what the current state is, but also for kind of reevaluating and reframing how we look at mental health and realizing that it's not all doom and gloom. Yeah, we're going through a lot, but there are also not only resources we can tap into, but there are also examples of what it is to be in a good mental space and how we can use those examples to help us as we move towards solutions again. So I really appreciate that kind of shift in perspective is necessary because we want to end this on a good note. We want to end this on a positive note. We want to end this on a note of here are some things that we can do as we move forward. So thank you. Thank you for that reframing, Vanessa. And Mrs. Pyle, as my last question to you, can you talk a little bit about how you have seen the work that you and your colleagues do, the difference you have seen the work that you do in the young people that you work with, maybe not necessarily like specifics in terms of success stories, but generally as you view the landscape in Guyana among the young people that you touch on a daily basis, that you work with on a daily basis, can you talk some more about how tapping into the resources Vanessa mentioned has actually been able to help your clients?
Well, for most of them are school age. Let's just start there. They're able to finish school. They're able to go on to university and have jobs that are able to, facilitate them having their own apartments. They're able to study and do all of these things. So there is upward mobility when we work with them. They aren't always, and I must say this, they aren't always success stories, but we have most of them. And they go on, some of them even go abroad and study. Those young people making a difference in their lives, they're able to expand their horizons, they're able to, and some of them even join the mental health field, whereby they're assisting other people and we have these mentorship programs where they go into, and some of them go on to study psychology and so on. And it warms my heart to know that, you know what, I understanding that where they were and where they are now, and they're helping others, making a difference. So that is important. We must understand that, it's amazing. It's having them go on and move on. It is wonderful.
I can see that that brings you joy. I like your face lit up as you were talking about the success story. So I can see that you're not only very passionate about what you do, but that you're passionate about how what you do helps people live better lives. And so thank you for your advocacy. Thank you for the work that you're doing. It's important work, and we're happy to hear that it's been impactful. So,
Thank you.
Joshua, my last question, you're welcome. My last question to you, Joshua, as someone who has been on the other side, as someone who has had to tap into those resources, as you move through, again, as you move through working through your mental health, practices, the practices that you use to keep yourself in a certain space. How do you see your advocacy growing over the next few years as you move through? I have to ask for help, but also I am now someone that people ask for help.
Yeah, so for me, I see myself growing, being not only an individual that would have to ask for help and people would ask for help, but I see it developing more into, because right now I see myself as a bridge. And I believe that eventually, when I get other people on with me, the bridge would continue to grow. And once the bridge continues to grow, more people would be able to get over that bridge, to over the I would say the gap, which is the fear of mental health. And yes, I believe that once I grow, that bridge would continue to grow and I'll be able to get more people across that bridge. And that's really my goal. I said I'm focusing on male, however, male, female, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter the sex, gender. We're all in this together. And I believe that as I continue to grow myself, as I continue to understand more about mental health, because it is something that I continue to learn about every single day. As I continue to learn about it, I continue to help other people cross that bridge, and hopefully they come with me so that we'd be able to expand that bridge, not only in Grenada, but in other CARICOM islands as well.
Thank you, Joshua. I love that as well. The idea of you being not only an advocate, but you seeing your advocacy really as connection. And as, again, bridge is such a great analogy because you are helping to connect individuals to resources, helping to connect them to a better future, a more healthy future in a lot of ways. So that's really important. So thank you all for joining me today for this World Mental Health Day CYA chat. Thank you so much to Mrs. Charlene Powell, mental health expert. Your input was invaluable, and I really hope that as you continue your work in Guyana, we're able to hear more about the success stories that come out of the work that you do. Thank you for sharing those resources. Again, it's sometimes as simple as putting on a song to dance to, or writing your feelings down in a journal, or taking a walk. Really making sure that you're tapping into who you were before things evolved into where they are now. Dr. Scarrett talked about that as well. And again, tapping into a professional, a medical professional. Tell your doctor. You may not be able to find a psychologist or a psychiatrist, but your doctor, as part of the medical field, can help to funnel you. And Dr. Scarrett talked about that as well, talked about the patient-centered approach. So as a young person, if you are feeling like something is wrong, something is off, Joshua talked about that too, the courage to find community and the courage to ask for help, because you never know who's actually available to reach out and say, I got you. You don't have to worry about this. We're good. We're good. And then Vanessa, again, the work that you're doing as the dean, as the leader of the CYA core, and working with the Alex Patton Foundation and other organizations that you mentioned, the work that y'all are doing, again, is so useful. And for over 1,000 young people to be able to tap into those resources on a daily basis, and the year's not even finished. So who knows what those numbers will look like by the end of the year. Again, providing that third space, providing that safe space is so important. And I'm really looking forward to seeing how the advocacy that you are doing in the Cayman, you'll be able to help other CYAs tap into the resources that they can use in their own countries. So working symbiotically, working along with the rest of the CYA core, who again, all of the CYAs are doing incredible work in these spaces and are really able to tap into themselves as professionals, but also making sure that they're supporting their constituents. You, those of you who are watching, you are their constituents, and they're really working to make sure that you have access to the resources that you need. So thank you so much to Dean Vanessa Burke of the CYA Core, Mrs. Charlene Pyle, mental health expert from Guyana, and Joshua Andal, who is the Grenada male CYA, as well as Dr. Tiffany Starrett, who had to leave us, but she was here to give us some insight as Montserrat's female CYA and also a medical practitioner. And thanks to all of you who were watching. This conversation could not have happened without you. We hope that you were able to learn something. We hope that you were able to gain a little bit of courage to say, you know, maybe things are not as good as I thought, and I'm going to reach out. I'm going to talk to someone. I'm going to tap into a community. And if you are not on that side, maybe you're now more able to understand what it means for someone who is struggling with mental health issues to have community. Because as Vanessa said, it's not just about the negative aspects of it. It really is about how we come together as friends, as church members, as school members, etc. And we form community and we rally around each other. So thank you again to Vanessa, Charlene, Joshua, and Tiffany. Thank you to the CARICOM Communications Unit. Thank you to Michelle Small Bartley, who is the head of the youth desk at CARICOM as well. Thank you to the entire secretariat. Also, thank you to the EU and PAHO, who are funding this larger CCH climate change and health project. Thank you to them for the support as well and for ensuring that the CARICOM Youth Ambassadors are able to do the work that you're seeing them doing. So stay tuned to the CARICOM Youth Ambassadors social media pages. Pay attention to the individual ones for your specific territory. You can follow us at CARICOM Youth Ambassadors on Instagram and Facebook, and also the CARICOM pages to learn more about the work that the CARICOM Youth Ambassadors are doing in your neck of the woods. Happy World Mental Health Day. Have a great afternoon.
You're such a champ, T.